So yeah, when you got started, you had been a realtor and you grew up in Billings, so you were familiar with the area and home values and stuff. And as a realtor, especially, you were familiar with the market, and so you just kind of went and got started. So like, this is for beginners. What do you recommend? I know what you recommend, but what do you recommend as the next step now after we know the values and we know what the rental market is?
See, once you know what the value is, what the rental market is, right? It's time to start getting out into the streets and go look at these properties, right? Go physically, go, if it's listed on the market, call up the realtor, say, I'm a local investor here. I'm looking at, could you show me this property? Go physically in there so you could see, because on pictures is one thing, right? But then when you go in, or when you go there, I mean, it's not going to show you the neighborhood, right? So you got to get the feel for the neighborhood. What does this look like? How much traffic is just by is this by the railroad tracks, or is it by um, a big business that's busy? So you want to go there and really look at the property itself and look at what's surrounding there.
Yeah.
That's
And
that's what I would recommend you do.
within the scope of that median price range and below. So anything that fits that criteria, generally those neighborhoods.
Yes, for sure. And here's a trick, because last week when we talk about, like, okay, well, these home prices, it just doesn't really quite cash flow, because even you put 20% down, right? So I'm going to share a secret that will help, because sometimes, especially if a property that's been sitting on the market for a long time, right? And long time in this market, we're talking about 90 days, 120 days, right? Or 180 days plus. The longer it's been sitting in the market, the better the opportunity, right? Because I'm actually looking at a property right now. It's been sitting on the market for a whole year. Okay.
Wow.
A whole year. And if it was, I mean, we had a great market the last year, right? I mean, it was priced right, it would have sold, but
Yeah.
it's priced high for the condition of the property and the location, right? So how do you get that to work? Well, what I realize is that if I can get the seller to basically, we do what's called creatively, right? What we call
Mhm.
seller financing, get the seller to finance the property for me. So this way, I don't necessarily have to go to the bank. Because when we were doing our numbers on our last episode, we were talking about, okay, well, these numbers, even if you take away the expenses that we calculate, right? You know, in easy math is whatever your gross income is, just take 30%. Right? If you take
Yeah.
30%, that basically will give you your net for quick down and dirty, right? And even at that, it wouldn't cash flow. But if you can get the seller what they want, and you can negotiate a payment that still makes sense, that you can cash flow. So just I'll take this live example. I'm talking to a seller. The property's been on the market for over a year. Okay. And basically, I did talk to the seller. He's definitely open to something that's creative. Okay. And I'll just use some numbers just for the sake of illustration. Right. So I said, Mr. Seller, if I can get you the price that you want, because he hasn't really dropped the price, if I can get you the price that you want, would you be open taking payments from me? Well,
Mhm.
what's that? Right? Well, basically, instead of me going to the bank and getting a loan and putting money down, why don't you become my bank? And the reason why I say that, because after talking to him, I already knew that he owns it free and clear. He doesn't have any loan. And even if there was still a loan on there, you can still make it work, right? Which would be called subject to taking over an existing mortgage, right? But
Mhm.
this, and because it's listed, obviously he has an agent. So I asked for the agent's contact information, and I call up the agent and I introduce myself. Hey, my name is Quito, and being I'm not a licensed realtor, right? I said, I just spoke to your seller, and he gave me your number, and I would like to put an offer on your property because we spoke. I spoke to the seller, and they're open to doing something creative, right? And this agent, we kind of went on explaining to you, so we understand what is going on.
Did she put up resistance initially to because it's not like a traditional deal because most realtors don't have a lot of experience with that side of things.
Right? Most don't, but here's just the thing: it's just really just kind of building that rapport. Because one, I've already spoke to the seller, so I know
Yeah.
that we're open to being creative and to taking payments, right?
Yeah.
So then when I introduce myself, say I've already spoke to your seller, you know, and I kind of went through how we spoke and what we talked about and what he was open to. And because it's listed, he gave me your number, and I said, "Would you be okay representing me as a buyer for your seller?"
Yeah.
So this way he can't say, "Oh, the seller's not going to," because I've already spoke to the seller. They already know. Because I didn't want to, because most agents they're working hard. They want to get their commission, right? So you
Yeah.
definitely want to circumvent them and cut them out of their deal, right? Now, could I have waited 3 months or so till the listing expired? I probably could, right? But with this strategy, it works because now I'm getting the listing agent on my side because
Mhm.
the agent's gonna get both sides, the buy and sell.
Right. So how does he get paid in that though? Because then if you're using their existing finances, you still do something with the deed, right? You still put that in escrow or something until
Right. Well, see how it works because the down payment that I would be using to put down would be enough to cover his commissions, right?
okay.
Or or I could even negotiate this. I mean, we haven't gone through it, but just for this example, is I could even, let him know, say, hey, I'll give you your commission, but let me make payments on the commission for you, right? Just say it was a $10,000 commission.
What's their guarantee that you'll so what's the guarantee for the realtor that you'll pay their commission if they take payments on it, and what's the guarantee for the seller that you'll make the payments on their home?
Right. And that's why, on the back end, right, you have your promisor, you have your deed of trust. So you have all these documentation that's legally binding, right? And
Yeah.
so and obviously with the agents, hey, I think most agents would like it because it's better to get something than to get nothing. Because if it just sits there, I mean, it's been over a year, it hasn't sold, right?
Yeah.
So and then the seller's motivated to sell, right? And the agent's motivated to sell as well because then he's going to get paid for doing his work.
Are those usually 6%? Is that what you usually promise them?
It varies. It varies whether whatever they negotiate, the agent negotiate with the seller. That's between them, and then
Oh,
whatever that is, I'm willing to pay full commission, whether that's 6%, 5%. Typically it is 6%.
yeah.
And I'm okay with paying that because as long as it pencils out on my end, right? As long as I know that the pains that I'm making, that I still cash flow and my return on investment on my down payment, it still hits my metrics. Because last time, we talked about having the buy box, right? So
Yeah.
you measure everything against your criteria. And if that works, like, okay, whatever price we negotiate, whatever payment we negotiate, as long as it fits in my buy box, and I can still cash flow and it still makes sense. So
Yeah.
that's why it's so important. That's why in the beginning we talked about really creating your buy box and what that looks like for you, and then you
Hmm.
just focus on that. So now when you're looking at opportunities, you just measure up against your buy box. Well, does it meet this criteria? And if it doesn't, then it's not a deal. And you can figure out, well, how can I make this a deal? Right.
Yeah. And that we said was like what? Um ARV minus ARV minus repair costs, and then take that, multiply it times uh, or ARV minus repair costs minus your wholesale fee, and then multiply that. Um, no, it's ARV times 0.70 minus your wholesale fee minus repair costs, and that's your maximum number.
Right, and that's how you know if that's going to be a flip, right? But if you're going to buy and hold, you're going to measure it against your criteria on your cash on cash return,
You're
whatever
holding.
metrics you set for yourself,
Yeah,
right? And in my case, I like to shoot for a 30% cash on cash return,
yeah.
right? So meaning if I put $10,000 down, right, I want to get my $10,000 back within 3 years or less.
So there's a lot of like you're pretty consistent, even though you've been doing this for a long time, as far as what's your buy box and stuff. I think I've seen some investors that as they get their portfolio built out to where they're comfortable with whatever, then the next things they buy are more like class B, class A, and they don't necessarily have to cash flow positively. They're more because they're financially able to, they're more in it for the appreciation. Is that risky?
Right? It depends on your journey, right? Depending on where you're at in your real estate journey. I'm hoping a lot of people who watch my channel, they're usually like beginning, they're just starting out, some of them are seasoned, right? Even with me, I don't buy things for the sake of depreciating thing. I'm not at that point yet because I'm still
Yeah.
learning. Just like you, I might just be a little further ahead, but I'm at the point where I'm still strictly going for cash flow. And yes, those the deductions and stuff you get on your taxes and stuff, those are great. But I don't focus that when I'm doing my underwriting because I'm just strictly going for cash flow.
Yeah. The which that brings up an interesting point. I was talking to which you may know. Have you heard of Prime Corporate Services? I think is what it's called.
Yes.
Yeah, I think the sub two guys recommend that or whatever. But I jumped on a call with them this week to talk about like the the anonymity. Yeah, thank you.
Mhm.
Of the umbrella whatever LLC, and then the how to structure it underneath and stuff. I was really impressed with like their service and just their communication. I talked to him more and learned more from him in an hour than I've talked to my current tax preparer slash whatever accountant guy. So I
Mhm.
just thought it was funny. I'm like pretty excited about doing stuff with them. But so then, so then if we want to talk hit specifically on like as far as me and where I'm at, and you could speak to like what I'm doing and just kind of like give me a little direction, whatever. So with the real estate thing, what's overwhelming is like there's there's a bunch of different lists and things you can do and things you can work like a million different directions. And if we were like in a big city, like if I was in Dallas Fort Worth, let's say, or some other huge metropolitan area, I could focus on just one of those methods and have enough to keep me busy to get off the ground and get my first deal, right? And so it feels a little bit different here because population is so much smaller that I think to actually have numbers, you've got to hit like a bunch of different methods, you know what I mean? To get to the same numbers you could from one list somewhere else. And so it's just kind of like, what can I narrow down and focus on? And what would you recommend knowing, how busy I am between, the stuff that we do and then all the other stuff, my other businesses that I have going and my regular W-2. It's just like like as far as calling and stuff, I'm usually at work and then the yeah, it's like I gotta cram it in somewhere, and I'm already trying to pull back from other things, trying to. Um, but uh, but yeah, like, how do you like mentally like focus on like just what are the like I think of the 80/20. I think what can I do consistently? I think that's what I'm looking at. I'm looking at all the different things, all the list, and by the time you skip trace things and do all this other stuff, like that would eat up a ton of time just trying to get the list ready to just call, right? Or mail or whatever.
Mhm.
And so it's like, but I want to find a method and a formula that can be focused for where I am now for starting and that I can do consistently. Like I can figure out how do I fit this into my day consistently. So every day, like I think we were talking about it the other day, but every day you go, did I get better, right? And so I can go, did I get better today as a real estate investor? And so there's progress too.
Right. And I think for you, because when you start out, it can sound overwhelming, right? But just what I would do is just focus on one channel, right? At first, focus on one
Yeah.
channel to see how that works instead of being spread out with like so many different channels. Because I know you're looking at like pre-foreclosure lists, right?
Mhm.
We don't have a lot here in Billings, unfortunately.
You know,
We don't have a lot, but that's okay.
I'm like, ooh, I found this on the list. Oh, Keto just bought it.
No, but the thing is, you focus, focus on one channel, and then just start working it. Whether it's because here's the thing: like if it hasn't been sold, right? As long as as long as it hasn't been sold, continue to market to them. Whether you're consistently sending them letters or calling them or texting them, or maybe you even go door knocking, right? You go knock on their door, right? So just get yourself in front of them, right?
Mhm.
And yes, we don't have a whole lot, so maybe what you could do is, okay, like this week I'm just going to focus on my pre-foreclosure list. Okay, next week, okay, let me focus on high equity. But here's the thing for you is like all you need is like your first deal. That's what we're focusing on, right?
Yeah.
You know, just focus on, I would focus on someone that has high equity, right? Someone that's high equity. This is what I share with people. It's like high equity, non-owner occupant, right? Meaning that they're not staying in, they're not living there. Okay. And I'd like to look for 15 plus years. Okay. 15 plus years. And why? Why do I pick 15 plus years? Well, 15 plus years means that they lived in their house. I mean, high equity, most of their mortgage is already paid down, right? Could be paid
Mhm.
down or could be paid off, right? Because 15 or more. So that's what I focus on when I'm sending out my letters. And, and I think for those of you guys that are following my channel, we're actually posting that letter that I use that really helped me, build out my portfolio.
We did post the link in the video on the shorts. You can't put it, there's nowhere to stick it. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and add it in the description on this, like full long, whatever, what do you call it? Long form.
Long
There
form.
you post, there's a description and whatever, but on the shorts there's not. So, but we'll put it on this one too. Um, so then if I, because now I'm kind of getting a battle plan here, but would you do, are you trying to touch like each potential lead or each whatever on your list? Are you hitting that like every week? So like one week it's a letter, the next week it's a phone call, then you drive by, knock on the door, leave a sticky note, whatever, until you get in contact with them. And then if you get in contact with them and obviously they're a motivated seller and there's a deal there, then you proceed with that. If they're not ready to like pull the trigger and make a decision, you touch that then every week or every month? What does it look
Yeah,
like?
once I there'll be once a month consistently. So they're going to hear from me, whether it's a call, whether it's another letter, right? And for me, what I do is like the letters that I do send out on high equity that I haven't received any callbacks on, they're
Yeah.
going to get a I wrote I rotate that through my list, right? So every other month they're going to hear from me, right? So if I send them stuff and they haven't responded to me, they're gonna get it like every other month or every couple months, right? But if they have responded to me, then this is where consistently every month you're gonna hit them with something, whether that's a phone call, whether you just go visit them, right? Whether it's a letter. So in real estate we call those touches, right?
Right.
They say that it takes like 33 touches to really get to be in like the front of mind, right? So if I ask you, okay, Aaron, what is the name five sodas, right? Brand
Cokes,
sodas. What
Sprite,
comes to your mind
Pepsi,
first? right?
Coke, Sprite, Pepsi, Rockstar, and it gives you wings, Red Bull.
Okay. Then notice the first three was pretty easy to name off, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You start to get four and five, you have to really think more. Well, that's because it's through brand recognition. Everybody knows Coke, Pepsi, right? But beyond, once you get past the third one, you really have to think like, okay, what is that, right? And that's why it's important that you're consistently touching these people, right? Especially if you make contact with them, you want to continue to touch them. And keep in mind, it doesn't necessarily have to be about real estate. It could just be about something else. But the fact is that you're in front of them, you're having a conversation, you're touching them, they're going to get your letter. Because we had people call us on letters they received like a year, like, oh man, I've been getting your letters for about a year. Okay. And then they decide to call. So you just never know when they're going to be ready. But the key is that consistency. And then when they do contact you, that's where you just continue to keep touching them, touching them, touching them. Because I literally built my business. There was this one gentleman that I kept touching for over a year, and we finally was able to do a deal. But here's the thing: he had like 7 other properties, right?
Oh,
And just from that one seller, I was able to acquire his whole portfolio. I've been touching base with him for like a year. So it's just the power is just follow up, follow up, follow up. Because I remember, I mean, just his first property that I acquired from him, it was an 18-unit apartment complex, right? I think I might have shared this with you, where it brings in about 7 grand a month, but I pay him 1,000 a month, so about $6,000 a month of income. So that's $72,000 a year. Okay, when you think about that, if I touched him, say like twice a month or whatever, right? Or I mean, that's like getting 3,000, making $3,000 every time I contacted the gentleman for a year, right?
oh.
So when you look at it that way, the value of time in just those touches, it's going to be worth it, right?
So how does a conversation like that start with a guy like that who's got 7 properties, and let's say you were just starting out, right? But you definitely wanted to hold. You were at the place where you were ready to hold. Uh, I mean, is it just he just was ready to retire and not have to be the landlord guy? And so
Yeah,
$1,000 he's willing to take because it's not going to push him up in a crazy tax bracket where he's going to pay it all in taxes, and he gets to retire and he's got guaranteed money coming in from you.
and that's the thing. Like when you're talking to the sellers, like there's really like the 4 pillars, right? We talk about motivation, timeline, condition, and price, right?
Right.
Those are the 4 pillars. It doesn't necessarily have to be in that order, right? So initially, when you're talking to him, and at that time, he wasn't quite ready yet, right? After talking, find out what he wanted. Because here's the key: when you're talking to sellers, it's really about finding out what they want. Because Zig Ziglar, you know, said this, and it stuck to my mind. Because you could have in life whatever you want as long as you help other people get what they want, right? So when you're
Right.
talking to sellers, like find out what their motivation, find out what it is that they want, and then figure out what can I do, how can I help them get what they want, right?
Yeah.
And it's just prime example like how you and I are working together, right? You came in, you found out what it is that I wanted, right? Like I wanted someone to help me with the social media, YouTube, right? And that's why we're working together, right? Because you're going to help me with that, and in return you're getting what you want, because I know I'm providing value for you in terms of, that's why we're having these conversations, these calls. So you're learning about real estate, you're learning what to look for and be a resource for you. So that's the same thing when you're working with sellers, right? You find out what it is that they want, and then figure out a way to get them just that. And it's, people think that it's about the property, like, oh, it's about the property, or it's about the money, it's about the price. That's it's not about that. right? It's about what is that they want. Like this particular seller that I'm, for example, he really wanted to retire, wanted to move out into Arizona because, winters in Billings, it's not fun. My wife hates it,
Yeah, mine too.
right? Nobody loves minus 40 degrees, weather, wind chill. You're in Billings. So, and the older folks, you know, they want to go south. And that's what he wanted. At
Mm,
that time, he wasn't quite ready yet, but I kept in touch with him. I would visit him. I would take, little goodies for him. My wife loves to cook, right? So,
yeah.
I would take, deep fried bananas. You had those, right? I would take those
Oh
to,
yeah. So
you
my
know,
kids are like, you brought me you when we went to the title company the other day for closing, you
uh,
gave me those taquitos or the egg rolls, and I took a picture of them and sent it to my wife. Well, she showed my kids, and dude, I had skipped breakfast and was just gonna fast through lunch. And then I got those egg rolls, and I was like, I smashed them all, man. And I got home, my son was like, "You didn't save me the egg rolls." He was mad. It was funny.
yeah. But and then that's the thing is like when you reach out to them. Like it doesn't have to be about real estate. I would just meet up with them. Sometimes I would take him for coffee, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes I would take him for dessert, but just building that relationship. And that's the key, really. It's just building relationships. And the more relationships you build with these sellers, right? Then this
yeah,
is this is where you get the deals because this is during the time when the market was hot. People were getting multiple offers left and right, and things wouldn't even stay on the market. But yet I was still getting stuff at 50, 60% below retail. Why is that?
crazy.
Right? Is because I built that relationship, and that's what I want to, you know, instill in you guys, people that are watching, like build relationships with seller because real estate is a long game, right?
Mhm.
It's because I plan on doing this for as long as I can breathe. I'm going to be doing something real estate related, right? Some form of fashion. And when you're building out your portfolio, like continue your day job. Don't jump ship yet. Keep your day job, keep working it, putting that side hustle into real estate, right? Then you get to the point where that hustle's starting to pay off, right? Because what you do now, you're not going to see the results for like, 60, 90 days down the road, right? I was actually talking to, um, one of my realtor friends, and she was saying, "Gosh, I'm just really busy right now. It just seems like I'm busy out of nowhere." I said, "Well, no, you actually been building this, for the last 60 days, 60, 90 days. You've been building, right? And so now, my friend is starting to see the results of the seed that she planted 60, 90 days ago. But it all
Yeah,
seemed like all of a sudden, but it really wasn't because she was building, and that's the same thing when you're building out your real estate when you're doing the prospecting. Right now it doesn't seem like you're making that much traction. It doesn't seem like it, but you're taking the action. You're going out there, you're sending out letters, you're getting yourself out there, you're door knocking, you're doing these activities. And the more you do that, it's just going to compound itself.
yeah. No, that's cool. What do you think about this? You were talking about the seller that you picked up the 18 units from, and I thought about it, and there is like I can't remember what her name is off the top of my head, but she talks about how there's a lot of boomers who are retiring now, and so you have all these businesses that they're willing to sell and owner finance, because obviously banks won't finance them, but they're willing to owner finance. And so you get into these cash flow from day one, and with no money down, and a lot of them are like they were built by that generation, and so you give them a tech facelift, and now all of a sudden they're wildly profitable, way more productive and efficient, and so you're able to put value into them right on day one. But it made me think about, as you were talking about this seller, there's people that are selling, that are motivated sellers, that are single family, single homeowners, whatever, and then there's investors who are looking to retire, looking to move south, looking to downsize their workload, right? And so you have like this huge generation of people who are in that retirement zone and in that ready to downsize kind of deal from their workload right now. And so that'll probably be the case over the next 10, 20 years. And um and so it's interesting to me because the way that they did deals and the way that they got deals and the way that they managed deals is probably a lot different from a lot of the younger generation that's coming up because we use so much tech. We use software platforms and things to help us to scale and to optimize the process of get acquiring and managing those properties. And so it is interesting that right now I would think that there's a lot of opportunity to pick up properties from people who are retiring and and I think it's going to get harder. It's going to be more competitive like 50 years from now when people are more savvy and more, aware because they're able to hold on to their stuff longer and manage it differently because they take advantage of software and they're just I don't know, it's to me the information age, right? The accessibility of the information and stuff as it gets out there more and more and more, it's just going to make it more competitive and the buyers that are selling are going to be a little more savvy too. And
Yeah, I think like right now, in this time, a lot of the sellers that I'm working with, they're still old school. They're still using, they're still going out and collecting checks versus having
yeah.
a direct deposit or collecting cash, and they're still just using a notepad. Right? I remember I was talking to one seller, and he literally just had a notebook, notebook like this, right? And and he had the addresses, and he was just doing it by hand, old school, right? But
You're
yeah,
like, what are the numbers on this property? I need to give a balance sheet for this. And he pulls
guys,
out
he
his,
just
his back pocket.
starts opening it up. So that's the thing. I mean, that's why it's like I say, it just goes back to really finding out their motivation and how you could add value. And here's the thing too, is like, you could even help them with, bookkeeping. You can help them with maintenance. Like, hey, you know what? You need a plumber. If you have resources like plumber, painter, contractors, you need stuff fixed,
Landscaper.
the landscaper, you provide your resources to the seller, whatever it is, right? Like always, I believe in always adding value, right?
Yeah.
Whatever you do, add value to the seller in any way, shape, or form, right? So just keep that in mind. It's not, because some people have a bad taste of investors. They think like investors are sharks and trying to take advantage of sellers, right?
Uh-huh.
And then that's why it's and that mentality's got to it shift. And that's why when I come from a I come from having like being a go-giver, right? Like I want to give, I want to nurture that relationship because it's not like a wham bam, thank you, ma'am. It's like, you know what? Let's just build this relationship, you know. And who knows? I mean, does it always work out that I get the property? No. But guess what? I just have another friend and I have another resource because, they might know somebody else that wants
Yeah.
to sell and they'll be thinking of me or whatever that situation is. So just building that resource. I mean, there's many times where I built some relationships and they ended up selling it to somebody else, right? Uh,
Hmm.
but here's the thing: you just lead with value and just kind of build that relationship. That's what I want to stress for you. If you can get anything out of this, is like lead with value. How can you help sellers, especially sellers with who are going through pre foreclosure? Like, how can you help them out? Right?
Hmm.
Maybe you could help them save their property. And guess what? You might not get the property if you end up helping them, but guess what? When that time comes to sell, they may be thinking of you, right?
Yeah.
So just planting those seeds, and the more seeds that you plant with sellers, eventually it's going to sprout. It's going to grow.
Yeah. All right on. I know. At some point here, I'm going to have some video to share with you on, doing some cold calls and some other stuff as we're
Yes,
doing some of this marketing, which will probably be super cringy, but
that's okay. You got to start somewhere, right? I mean, nobody starts out like smooth, like the more you do it, the better you get. So, just film yourself making the calls or going door knocking, whatever activity that you're doing, just document it because I'm sure other people will be inspired by your story, right?
yeah.
Like when you look like, 6 months from now, a year from now, you look back, it's like, man, I've learned so much because you're taking action. It's one thing to get the education, right? Because I mean, you can get it with YouTube. You could learn pretty much anything you want to learn, especially when it comes to real estate. There's
Yeah.
lots of channels that are a lot bigger than mine, a lot more, but that's okay. I'm sharing what I can in my journey, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, so I guess I'll just put together my action plan and try to simplify it and just go every week. What's the action that I'm going to focus on and the list that I'm going to focus on, and then just try to make it to where it's like not 15 balls, but like 3 balls that I can juggle every week. I'm changing the ball, right? But I'm
And
calling
then,
them. I'm
and then go
scaling
out
them.
and go out in the field. Go look at these properties. You
Yeah,
know, go look at them. Start building relationships with other agents.
yeah,
Let you know, hey, I'm looking to buy, right? So just start building relationships. Start finding contractors, inspectors, get to know the title people. So all the players that is involved in the transaction. Because in that transaction, you have different players. You got the title people, you got mortgage people, you've got inspectors, right?
actions.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah. So there's so many.
crazy.
Yeah. So I mean, like in one transaction, there's like 12 different players just in one transaction. And that's why real estate it helps the economy, right? Because if
Yeah.
every transaction you do, you're going to affect 12 different people, right? Everybody's going to get a piece of the action.
Are you listening, Portland? Your whack laws. That's funny.
So,
Uh,
yeah, I hope that's valuable for you today, and just really take it and just take action. Continue to do you know going out there, taking action, following through. And just keep in mind it's a long game, and focus on activities versus a bunch of different things. Just focus on a couple of different things that you can do to move the needle forward.
yeah, absolutely. And then eventually, at some point, we'll bring some. Once I get some leads coming in and actually work them and have some conversations, we can do some analysis on is this a deal or is it not a deal, and
Absolutely,
we'll
yeah,
keep
we can do it.
if we actually get it, if we lock it down and close on it and whatever, then we can present it as, is this a deal or is it not a deal, and then
Yes.
let everybody comment and stuff, and then the next week we'll go, this is what actually happened.
Yep. Awesome.
That'd be cool. Yeah, if you guys anything you guys want to see or know, um, put it in the comments. Like Keto will answer those questions, or if there's something you'd help with. If you want a JV on anything in the Billings area, or if you have something that you have locked up but you need buyers in another state or whatever, like again, he's got a big contacts list, so definitely reach out to us and you can make that happen. So yeah.
All right. Well, stay tuned and continue to, if this is providing value for you, subscribe and follow us on our journey. And thank you for helping us grow the channel.
Awesome. See you guys.